Mabuhay mga binibini at ginoo, mga bata at matanda, mga ate at kuya. Narito na naman ang isang kabanata ng hashtag cyberkwentuhan. Ngayong gabi ang ika-11 kabanata, hashtag Stop OSEC, Survivor's Journey to Recovery and Healing.
Ating ipinapakilala si Miss Jem Viola, isang social worker mula sa St. Mary of Brescia Integrated Development Foundation Incorporated.
Yung mga bata kasi na naging biktima ng OSEC ay napakalalim nung naging sugat nila sa nangyari. Kumbaga, hindi nahihirapan sila magtiwala sa mga tao sa paligid nila. Bago sila naging biktima ng OSEC, sila ay naging biktima din ng neglect or pagpapabaya. Yung nakakalungkot na part ay parang yung trauma nila nangyagaling dun sa separation sa pamilya, hindi mismo doon sa OSEC na nangyari.
Tunghayan po natin yung magiging kasagutan na obserbasyon na ni Miss Anita Pecson mula sa RMT CEFAM.
Ang nawala ay yung pagpapahalaga sa bata. So unti-unti, lalalim po ulit yung hindi pagpapahalaga. Lalalim yun na nandito na yung portion na ginamit. At ano ang sugat na ito? Kung alam natin yung sugat, alam natin kung ano ang hihilumin. Ano ang sugat? Ito po ay yung para silang sa English kasi betrayal ito eh. Betrayal kasi yung inaasahan mo na mag-alaga sa iyo, yung inaasahan mo na magpahalaga sa iyo ay hindi mo naasahan. Ang naapektuhan talaga ay yung tiwala. At saka ang isa ding naapektuhan talaga ay hindi nila alam kung ano ba yung tama o totoo. Hindi nga nila naisip na ang sugat nila ay yung primary trauma ang tawag doon. Doon sa center kung nasaan sila, ang dinideal muna nitong mga ni Miss Jem at saka ni Sergeant, ang sinasabi nila na dinidil muna nila ay yung secondary trauma. Anong unang ina-address nila? Yung tiwala. Saka pa lang natin madidinig, ano nga ba talaga ang nangyari sa loob ng mga batang ito? At pag nalaman natin ito, dito na po yung elements ng healing.
Ng ating panghuling bisita.
Si Sister Mary John Mananzan.
Ang gamitin nyo yung itong Matthew 18, yung sinasabi na he who scandalizes one of these little ones that believe in me, it is better for him or her. Better for him or her that a millstone, malaking bato, will be hung around their necks and be drowned in the depths of the sea. Excuse me, si Jesus yan ang nagsabi. What a terrible thought to think that no child
Is safe
Is
in their
safe.
own home.
in their
Yes.
own home. So taningin mo sa sarili mo, if a child is not safe in his or her home, where can she be safe in any part of the world? Isn't that tragic? I am co-opting yung ginagamit ngayon na whole nation approach. Alam nyo naman kung saan yung ginagamit, ano? I will
Opo.
co-opt it, but not against human rights activists, kundi against cybercrime.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, our distinguished guests, and sa ating mga ka-hashtag cyberkwentuhan. I am Evangel Reyes, and I am with my partner.
What is up mga kakwentuhan? Sana goods na goods ang inyong mga gabi ngayon. I am John Christian David and we are your friendly hosts for this night. Kaya welcome to us and to all of you mga ka-hashtag cyberkwentuhan.
Grabe, partner, I honestly can't believe na we're in a brand new installment of cyberkwentuhan.
That is right, partner. And real talk lang ha, I'm super duper excited for what's in store for us this episode, partner.
Same feels, partner, and the fact that we're handed the proverbial baton. I can't even begin to wrap my thoughts around it. And of course, no, partner, we would like to acknowledge our previous hosts, Miss Jordina Fajardo and Mr. Ernest Yap. So just like them po, mga kakwentuhan, John and I are communication students from Holy Angel University School of Arts and Sciences. And we represent Angel Network, the official multimedia network of Holy Angel University, and the Communicators League, the official organization of HAU Communication Students.
Ayan, partner, bago tayo sumulong sa ating kwentuhan today, ating i-acknowledge muna ang ating mga kasama sa ating live stream, pati na rin sa ating Zoom. So shout out po kay Miss Maria Fe Lucia Palma from Marist Communities at ang Higala Organization. Ayan. So, shout out din para kay Mr. Romeo Panganiban from Fiati University. At isa din siya, partner, sa ating mga previous guests, sa ating mga previous episodes. Ayan.
Ayan, hello po. Maraming salamat po sa pagsama ninyo sa amin ngayong gabi. And eto din, special mention sa ating mga FB viewers, students from Don Antonio Lee Chiwan Integrated School, and ating mga viewers from Bicol Region and from Tagbilaran City, Bohol. Ayan, hello sa inyo guys.
Nako, nakaka-excite naman dahil tayo'y kasama natin ngayon. Hindi lang ang mga dito sa area natin, ang mga viewers natin dito sa area natin, kundi pati na rin sa mga iba't ibang panig ng ating bansa. Kaya naman, here we are with our kakwentuhan, whom I bet are just as excited as us to learn from the amazing guests we have invited for this evening.
I bet so, partner. Kaya naman, without further ado, we officially welcome you all to the
Hashtag fact,
Na Fact.
spilling the tea on fake news and misinformation.
Once again, as we co-present Cyber Kwentuhan with Cyber Guardians PH, we would like to thank Cyber Guardians PH for the opportunity to inform, engage, and empower the youth through hashtag Cyber Kwentuhan. Your platform is instrumental in equipping young Filipinos with the right knowledge to adapt to the ever-changing digital landscape, especially in this era where misinformation and disinformation is rampant.
Kaya naman mga kakwentuhan, inaanyayahan po namin kayo na i-follow ang mga official social media pages ng Cyber Guardians PH. Ayan po, nakikita niyo po, meron po siyang Twitter account, Instagram account, and also a YouTube account. For its Twitter, at CGuardiansPH. Para naman sa Instagram, we have at CyberGuardiansPH. At para naman sa kanyang YouTube account, Cyber Guardians PH. Kaya naman together mga kakwentuhan, let us make a safer, a better, and a healthier cyberspace. Ayan, so i-follow nyo lang ho ang mga official social media pages ng Cyber Guardians PH, and ayun nga, together let us make a safer cyberspace. Partner, recap lang sa ating naging previous episode. Ang napag-usapan natin ay OSEC. Isang bagay na noon ay hindi ko alam, I will admit, pero nang napanood ko ang episodes 11 and 12 ng ating cyber kwentuhan, nalaman ko kung ano nga ba ang real definition ng OSEC. Ito ang tinatawag nating online sexual exploitation of children. At sa ating previous 2 episodes, nalaman natin na may iba't iba pala itong forma o forms and manifestations. Kabilang na nga dyan ang tinatawag nating grooming and sexploitation. And ito, partner ha, ang OSEC ay isang napakalalang issue na. But what makes this issue worse is that it doesn't only involve yung mga bata na 4 years old, 5 years old, pero pati ang mga infants, hindi ba? Kaya naman, isa itong nakababahalang issue sa ating lipunan ngayon. Kaya naman kailangan lang na mapagtuunan ng agarang pansin at aksyon, at natutunan natin na may iba't ibang mga intervention projects na pinangungunahan ng mga concerned individuals as well as organizations. Ayun nga din, tinatawag nga ang OSEC bilang ang modern face of human trafficking dahil sa paggamit din nito ng different online platforms na which makes it as a very pressing issue. Ikaw naman, partner, ano ang naging learnings mo or ano ang mga natutunan mo sa ating previous episodes?
Alam mo, agree ako sa lahat ng sinabi mo, no, partner. And ako, happy ako kasi may platform na ganito na kagaya natin sa Cyber Guardians, no, na nabibigyan natin ng boses yung mga issues na napakahalagang ma-address sa ating society tulad nga nitong online sexual exploitation of children. And napakahalaga talaga, partner, na pangalagaan natin yung mga kabataan, protektahan natin yung karapatan nila, and to make them feel safe sa kanilang mga tahanan and of course sa cyberspace, partner.
And partner, that's exactly the goal of the hashtag Cyberkwentuhan project. And right now, we are streaming live at Cyber Guardians PH official Facebook page. And we are currently cross-posted din ng CLTV 36 as well. And you know what, partner? With CLTV 36's 775,000 followers, our project is reaching far and wide.
Tama ka dyan, partner. Far and wide talaga. At hindi lang yan, partner, kasi daragdagan ko pa. Alam mo ba na napapanood din tayo ngayon live sa Facebook account ng CBCP Episcopal Commission on Youth. Adding to that reach once more with over 30,000 followers, partner.
Nako, partner, bigatin talaga, pero dadagdagan ko pa yan. Siyempre, Holy Angel University Facebook accounts are also live streaming our Cyber Kwentuhan episode tonight. Kaya naman kaway-kaway to our fellow Angelites and our fellow communicators.
Ayan, magandang gabi sa ating mga ka-cyberkwentuhan. Ipa-feel nyo naman sa amin ang inyong mga excitement. If you're watching sa ating Zoom session, kindly click naman ang heart reaction button. And kung nanonood ka naman sa stream natin sa Facebook, comment some hearts naman to us.
Nako, partner, wala pa man tayong nasisimulan. Hindi pa man tayo nagkwekwentuhan. Nako, nakikita ko ang mga reactions symbolizing their willingness para makasama sa ating kwentuhan ngayon. Pero, mga kakwentuhan, the night is still young. Kaya naman for sure, mapupuno na naman natin ang gabi ng mga meaningful conversations and newfound learnings para sa ating mga viewers.
Tama ka dyan, partner. And ako excited na talaga ako na marinig, no, yung mga isi-share ng ating mga guests later on. Pero bago yan, by the way, for our Zoom participants, kindly post your name and your organization sa ating chat box to be recognized.
Ayan, hello rin po sa lahat ng ating mga Facebook Live audience. Shout out po kay Mary Joy O. Pacaldo from Higala Organization, Tagbilaran City College of Bohol. Ayan. Meron din po tayo, ayan, Mr. Oykam Lati Ronquillo, listening daw siya. Ayan po, shout out din po kay Miss Jana Cotton. Ikaw, partner, watching from Biliran.
Ayan, partner, meron din tayo mga viewers from Ilocos Sur, and special mention to Sister Evelyn Jose from Talita Philippines. Ayan, hello po sa inyo. And nanonood din sa atin ngayon,
yes,
partner, nanonood din sa atin ngayon sina Marcia Pineda and Tisha Bruan from Holy Angel University.
Yes. And i-acknowledge din natin ang representative of CBCP Episcopal Commission on Biblical Apostolate. Ayan. Shout out din po kay Miss Mary Julie El Sanudo from Notre Dame of the Diangas University Integrated Basic Educational Department ng Espino Campus, Labangal, General Santos City. Nandyan din po, kasama din po natin ang Balaygiti UNP DOST scholars from University of Northern Philippines from Vigan. And shout out din po kay Mr. Marco Nicolay Pimentel from General Santos City. Ang dami nating kasama, partner. Talaga nga namang nakikita natin
partner.
ang willingness.
Partner, meron din tayong FB viewer from Marceline, General Santos City. So napakalawak ng reach ng ating kwentuhan ngayong gabi, partner.
Yes, partner, ang dami nating mga kasama sa iba't ibang lugar o sulok ng ating bansa. Pero stay tuned lang kayo dyan mga kakwentuhan dahil marami kayong matututuhan for this episode.
Tama ka dyan, partner. And in fact, no, to those who would like to be a member, a volunteer, or a program partner of Cyber Guardians PH, or perhaps kung gusto nyo maging part ng core group ng ating mga youth leaders, pwedeng-pwede nyong i-fill out ang ating Cyber Youth Empowerment Program Google document. The link can be found in the caption of the live stream, and we'll also post it sa chat box.
Cyber Youth Champions involve college-level students, and Cyber Youth Warriors involve high school level students as well as school leavers. We'll be waiting patiently for you guys. Please save the form provided on our Zoom chat box now and fill it out later. And with that, sasabihin ko sa inyo, see you all.
Yes, and hindi lang yan dahil inaanyayahan din namin kayo na sumali sa ating viral video and spoken poetry contest. So partner, kailan ba ang deadline ng viral video contest and saan nila pwedeng isubmit ang kanilang mga entries?
Unahin muna natin ang mga mechanics ng ating viral video contest na makikita ninyo sa ating screen ngayon. And don't worry you guys, the official mechanics of this contest will be provided sa official Facebook page ng Cyber Guardians PH. Paalala lang, the registration link is posted on our Zoom chat box as well as the comment section of our live stream. And huwag niyong kalilimutan, all entries must be submitted on or before October 15, 2021 on CGPHCY hereexpress@gmail.com. Lahat ng yan makikita po ninyo sa ating sa official Facebook page ng Cyber Guardians PH. Kaya i-follow nyo na ang ating social media pages. Next naman partner, yung isa nating contest. Ano nga ba kasi yon? Isang poetry
Yes.
or spoken word poetry contest. Ano nga ba ang mga
Yes,
mechanics
partner.
natin dyan, partner?
Para sa ating spoken poetry contest, ayan, ang ating pong mechanics ay naka-flash ngayon sa inyong mga screens. So para sa mga interesadong sumali, ayan, pwede nyong isubmit ang inyong mga entries on or before October 15, 2021 to cgphcyberexpress@gmail.com. Ang ating registration link ay posted na po sa ating Zoom chat box and sa comment section ng ating live stream. And if you need further details or may mga concerns kayo, pwede nyong bisitahin ang ating official accounts sa Cyber Guardians. And ayan, we hope na makasali kayo, ma-share ninyo ang inyong mga talento sa ating viral content na video and spoken word poetry. Once again, it is a beautiful sight to see you all here for today. And we hope that you're all comfortable and prepared for your minds to be blown, as this virtual kwentuhan will serve as a tool to address the issue of fake news and misinformation, as well as to educate the youth regarding its impact on our society.
This episode aims to instill in the minds of the students the relevance of learning to distinguishing fact from fiction and recognizing when disinformation is taking place.
After all, it's 2021, guys. It's time na i-practice natin ang art of scrutinizing. True ba, partner?
Nako, partner, true na true yan. Pero worry not, guys. There is nothing basic nor boring about this kwentuhan because there is a lot. And what I mean by a lot is a lot of boiling tea to spill.
Mainit-init na tsayan, partner, ah. Excited ako. Kaya naman tonight, we are starting a new topic. At itong pag-uusapan natin, partner, very timely to, lalo malapit na naman ang eleksyon. At mga kakwentuhan, alam nyo ba na kalat ito ngayon sa social media? Nako, alam na natin ang katagang ito. Kaya naman, partner, matanong lang kita, no, ikaw ba? Narinig mo na ba to?
Naku, oo naman, partner. Sa tagal ko ba namang nagbababad sa mga different digital platforms. Nako, alam na alam ko yan. Ang daming nagkalat niyan sa Facebook. Nakabasa pa nga lang ako nung minsan na pinagkakalat nila na namatay na daw yung isang personality. Kaloka ang di ba? Fake news naman pala.
Pero partner, I'm just actually wondering, no? Ano nga ba yung kaibahan ng misinformation and disinformation? Kasi I notice na sometimes people use it as parang interchangeable terms, pero in fact it's not. So later baka pwede nating bigyang linaw 'yan. And I think then, partner, is it really correct to term it as fake news? Kasi 'di ba tinuturo sa atin na news itself is already the truth. So tama bang tawagin siyang fake news? Hindi ba siya counterintuitive nun, partner?
Nako, correct ka dyan, Mars. Nako, ang dami nating mga katanungan at sigurado pati na rin ang ating mga audience na nanonood at nakikinig sa atin ngayon. Kaya naman mabuti pa, panoorin na muna natin itong video na ito para marami tayong learning sa fake news and misinformation.
Fake news itself, we try to avoid the term now because it puts together into one category many different kinds of harmful content that's online. So we make the distinction now between misinformation and disinformation. What is common between them is the information inside is incorrect, not factual, not accurate.
The common definition of fake news is that they consist of lies, misinformation, and disinformation. So sometimes there are mistakes that are made in the reportage of the media. Some are minor, others are major. The major mistakes would have to do with crucial data as well as analysis that would tend to disregard other aspects of the data that are gathered.
Actually, there are two types of fake news. Fake news that could be based on what we call misinformation, meaning dahil nagkamali yung nagre-report, no, or pwedeng mali kasi yung information na binigay ng source.
So the difference between misinformation and disinformation, in many ways, misinformation is organic. It spreads, it's natural. People will disbelieve some things and that happens, right? Disinformation is orchestrated. It's funded, it's orchestrated, it's planned. In politics, it's run by professionals. So it's run by heads of, prominent PR people and advertising and campaign staff and organized volunteers in political campaigns.
And that is it for our first dose of learning about disinformation, misinformation, pati na rin about sa fake news. So, ang takeaway ko doon, partner, parang nabanggit doon na nabanggit nung isang speaker doon na there is fake news that is based on misinformation which can be organic, which is kind of natural, hindi sinasadya. And there's also fake news about disinformation na orchestrated na kung minsan ay ginagawang weapon to attack other people din pero meron din silang nasabi doon about the usage of fake news. Ano naman ang takeaway mo doon, partner?
Ako partner, no, talagang misinformation and disinformation differs when it comes to the intention. Kasi misinformation, kumbaga, honest mistake siya and wala naman talagang intention to mislead. Although, may false information na laman yung content. And when you say kasing disinformation, ito yung planned, no? Sometimes may propaganda, 'di ba? So, pero both talaga sila ay kailangan nating malabanan. Kasi maling impormasyon pa rin partner.
Tama ka dyan, partner. Mapa disinformation man or misinformation, it leads to obscurity. It leads us further from the truth and reality na talaga nga namang isa sa mga pundasyon ng isang democratic society. Kaya ang result, ang nangyayari ay nakokompromiso ang ating kalayaan, partner.
Tama ka dyan, partner. At para mas bigyang linaw pa tayo, no, sa mga usaping ito, I'm very excited na rin na ipakilala later ang ating mga speakers. Kaya naman, on to our program proper. Our participants are asked to take down notes. And should there be something that you need to clarify with our guests, we encourage you to type your questions for them to be addressed. And be that as it may na rin, partner, no, to further shed light on the issue of fake news and misinformation, allow me to introduce the first one to spill the tea, Mr. Danilo Aranya-Araw.
Mr. Danilo Aranya-Araw is an associate professor at the UP-CMC Department of Journalism and a special lecturer at the PUP Department of Journalism.
He is the editor of Media Asia, an international peer-reviewed journal. He is also the associate editor of Bulatlat Multimedia and a weekly columnist of Pinoy Weekly. His 6 most recent books are Objetibong Kritisismo, Kuro-Kuro, Hay Naku 2013, Saysay ng Pagkakaugnay-ugnay, at Hay Buhay pati na rin ang Kontrateksto.
He earned a BA in Communication, major in Journalism, cum laude from UP Diliman, and was adjudged Most Outstanding Journalism Student upon his graduation. He finished his MA in Philippine Studies with high distinction at DLSU Manila and was awarded a gold medal for academic excellence.
As of the moment, he has already submitted his dissertation to fulfill his doctorate requirement, partner.
Nako, partner, sa lahat ng mga nabanggit nating mga credentials niya and achievements, ang masasabi ko lang is OMG talaga. Isn't he amazing, partner?
Truly wonderful, partner. Kaya naman kilalanin na natin siya kasi excited na ako. Kaya naman everyone, once again, let us welcome our first guest, Mr. Danilo Aranya-Araw. A virtual applause, please.
Hello, good evening to all of you. Can you hear me?
Good evening po. Yes po, loud and clear po, sir.
Good
Okay.
evening, sir. Good evening, sir. For the purpose of tonight's talk po, how would you like us po to address you?
Danny,
Okay, Sir Danny, it is. So, sir, on to our discussion or kwentuhan. Ang mga terms na fake news and misinformation, hindi naman natin maitatanggi na laganap yan. Pero isa sa mga undeniable truth is that many people interchangeably use these terms at it causes confusion din po. Kaya naman po for your first question, what are the salient factors that distinguish misinformation and fake news? And kagaya na lang po ng question kanina, is it right to call it fake news or should it be disinformation?
let's address your last question first. Fake news is not supposed to exist for 2 reasons. Number 1, it's an oxymoron. News cannot be fake because the generic definition of news is that it's based on the truth. It's supposed to be real. So if you use, for example, a mathematical technique called transitivity, if news is real, then fake news is fake real. So it doesn't make sense, right? So that's why it's not an oxymoron. It's not just an oxymoron. It can even be moronic, right, to do that. Now, the other reason is the fact that fake news is too vague as a construct, as a concept. It's better to be more precise in the words that we use. So, what are the more precise equivalent words for fake news? That would be either lies, misinformation, or disinformation. So, when you talk about lies, sa wikang Filipino, kasinungalingan, di ba? Pwede namang sabihing peke yon. Kaya lang dapat nagdi-distinguish din tayo kung ano ba yung tinatawag na honest mistake na hindi naman kasinungaling, na wala namang intensyong magsinungaling yung tao pero nagkamali lang siya. Halimbawa, yung pangalan, yung apelyido ko Araw, kung nalagyan niyo ng W yan, mali yan, di ba? Pero honest mistake yon. Hindi ko kayo pwedeng sabihin na mga sinungaling kayo o mga fake news purveyors kayo. So there has to be that distinction. Now, with misinformation and disinformation, as shown in the video produced by the UP Media and Public Relations Office that involves me, Dr. Claire David, and Dr. Rachel Can, nilinaw naman ni Claire David na yung misinformation and disinformation would have to be distinguished because it has to do with intent. Ang misinformation, minsan parang, hindi mo sinasadya pero nagkamali ka. Halimbawa, sa datos, may computation error, di mo sinasadya. Pero, nagkamali ka pa rin. But you have to own up to that mistake the next day or in the next publication cycle. However, with this information, it's more, as Dr. Claire David said, orchestrated or intentional. Alam mo nang mali, pero ipinagkalat mo pa rin, pinalaganap mo pa rin kahit na alam mong mali. And unfortunately right now, without preempting our future discussions later on, fake news has become an industry. In other words, maniwala kayo sa hindi, may kumikita mula sa kasinungalingan. And milyon-milyon ang kinikita nito. Halimbawa, pangalanan natin yung trending news portal na yan, na na-shutdown ng Facebook yung ilang mga pahina. Milyon-milyon ang industriyang yan. And there are some influencers who really use their number of followers, organic or otherwise, to rake in money. Sometimes they get as much as 5 figures for just posting one content, di ba? So actually, if you want to trivialize the issue a little bit, pwede kang kumita mula sa fake news. Kaya nga minsan yung running joke sa mga communication majors, we may be in the wrong profession kasi journalism, walang pera. Tapos baka patayin ka pa kapag ka-responsable ka. Samantalang kung fake news purveyor ka, madali easy money yan eh. Kaya lang, syempre, again, we're not trivializing the issue because it all boils down to ethics and, the basic principle of truth-telling, which should be inherent in any journalism and communication endeavor. Okay, I'm sorry if I said a mouthful already, but I'm sure there are other questions that you have in mind.
Thank you po, sir. And I think po, no, it's really important for us as audiences na nakakakita ng mga information na to be critical. Kasi minsan po, hindi natin namamalayan. Sabi nyo nga po, ang laki ng kinikita ng mga spreaders na mga false information na to. So, kapag tayo naging biktima, nag-share, hindi natin napapansin na nagagamit na pala nila tayo dito sa intention nila na to. And for your next question naman po, sir, I have a prompt here po. Data shows that the high proficiency on social networking platforms results in young people's wide exposure to social media. With the help of internet technology, a few clicks gives people an access to vast loads of news and information on almost anything and from anywhere around the world. On the other hand, it also exposes them to the danger of encountering fake news. 86% of net users fall for fake news. And this is from Enquirer.net. So, given the data po, sir, why do people still fall for fake news? And can we only find fake news po ba sa social media lang?
Okay, before I answer your question, let us quantify further the general statements that you made. According to data from Internet World Stats, more than 70% of Filipinos have access to the internet already. And almost 100% actually are on social media. So there is still that minority of the population, particularly those living in rural, remote areas who don't have access to the internet, much less electricity or even potable water. Okay, so that's how big it has become. And if you would notice, way back in 2001, the access to the internet then was just a single digit figure, 5%, if I'm not mistaken. So the reach of the internet has become bigger. However, we have to be level-headed about it because studies have shown that television, is still the most powerful and the most glamorous, quote-unquote, medium. And part of the evidence there would be the fact that in every election cycle, ad spending would go more on television, particularly those identified with the leading networks, the channels identified with the leading networks. So with that particular metric, we can still see the power of the internet, especially now that we're in a pandemic where people have become dependent online, not just for their own entertainment fare, but also for remote learning, work from home arrangements, and all that. So the tendency, and now I'm trying to answer your question, so the tendency to fall for fake news becomes even more real at the time of the pandemic, where there is even greater dependence on the internet. So the problem now is that aside from the fact that it has become an industry, fake news has also become more sophisticated with the introduction of even modern technology. With the progression of technology, it should be geared toward, better information dissemination. But right now, to quote from what Maria Ressa wrote, years ago, there is now the weaponization of the internet. And if I should add, the weaponization also of various technologies, both hardware and software. So before, it was unimaginable to produce deep fakes. But now it's happening, and you don't need to be well versed in computer technology to do deep fakes, because right now, I won't mention the specific software programs that you can use, but right now it's just point and click away in terms of trying to splice videos and imitate certain voices, even inflections of voices, so that what would appear to be on video would be the message, which is the exact opposite of what the source of information would want to convey. So there is that particularity insofar as fake news is concerned. Because we need to stress this point, because sometimes people say that people fall for fake news because they are idiots, or they're inherently stupid, or they're uneducated. We cannot be elitist in that particular regard. Of course, there will always be people who may be idiots, but I would like to think that it has more to do with the sophistication, with the level of sophistication, to the point where even those with PhD sometimes would end up sharing false content on their social media accounts. So part of the answer to your question is the sophistication that go with fake news production. Now, the other aspect that we need to look at would be the general lack of media literacy. And here, we have to call out the various curricula pertaining to media and information literacy. Don't get me wrong, I think the K-12 program already has the MIL, or the Media and Information Literacy Program, but I've looked at the content in the K-12 program, and it's geared more toward information technology and the front-end and back-end aspects of ICT. So there's nothing wrong with that. But of course, there's a need to focus more on ethics, to focus more on how the media work. Something as simple as how to read newspapers. It's not just simply the felicity in reading that we want to look at, but also the various contents or the various parts of print media. So those aspects are not really given that much attention in MIL. And I guess the silver lining is that based on the CHED curriculum on communication and journalism, there are now specific courses on media literacy and even news literacy. So I think that's the step in the right direction, but that's at the college level or at the higher education institution level. What we need to do is to instill and integrate media and information literacy at the elementary and high school levels. But unfortunately, I'm sorry to say this, it's not being achieved insofar as the K to 12 program would be concerned. So that's why there's still a need to overhaul the content of K to 12. There's not much time to mention anymore why K to 12 program is geared more towards employability rather than knowledge generation. But the academy of learning should be geared more toward the pursuit of knowledge rather than making career-oriented individuals out of students. Skills are important, but knowledge is importanter. Yeah. Anyway.
Thank you po, sir. Talaga po masasabi natin na despite sa paglaganap ng digital technology sa ating current society, despite its vitality and different advantages, masasabi din po natin na sa kabilang banda, meron din po siyang advantages at kabilang na nga po doon ang paglaganap ng misinformation and disinformation. Now, Professor, given your expertise and your different publications sa mga na-publish mo ng mga written works, can you categorize or characterize the people who are most prone or and least prone po to be victim of fake news?
Okay, that's a good question. I think we operate on the assumption that all of us, and no exception whatsoever, all of us are always prone to fake news. And based on a survey conducted by, if I'm not mistaken, Pulse Asia, actually more than almost 90% of those surveyed said that they were exposed to fake news. So the keyword here is exposed. It means that they had an experience of reading certain fake news items. So the probability of us falling for fake news will always be there. But what would be the quick remedies in terms of not falling for fake news? Of course, media education and media literacy would be important. So the proper way of reading the text, how to differentiate between official websites and scrupulous websites. So those are important. However, our knowledge of current events should also be clear because sometimes if we're not, for example, updated on latest news about COVID-19 vaccines, we would fall for, let's say, the fake news that you don't need to be injected, you only need to ingest a particular tablet so that you can fight COVID-19, right? Maybe in the future that can happen, but right now, that's not the case. Or perhaps you would say that you don't need to have an appointment to go to the vaccination center. You just go there and walk in and you'll be inoculated. Maybe it was true in the past, but right now, that may not be the case. Or perhaps in your own locality, that may not be true, right? So knowledge of current events would also be necessary. So that's why the challenge for the youth right now is to be aware of what's happening. I mean, don't just immerse yourself in the adventures of Nadine Lustre in Siargao. Of course, the pictures of her natural beauty would be very much appreciated by people. But of course, aside from that, you should also look at the Senate hearings that are going on as regards the alleged mismanagement of funds by the Department of Health. Okay? Don't just immerse yourself in the sound bites of winarak nyo ko or bugbog na po ako. I mean, those are good sound bites. And sometimes the media should even be called out for just focusing on those sound bites without analyzing the context of why they are what? Ano yung termino ng millennials? Sad boys? BOI? Right? So, pa-sad boy effect daw, di ba? So, actually, those are good sound bites, but we have to dig deeper. Now, why do we need to dig deeper? Because with knowledge of current events, it's possible that you may be able to discern properly the content that you get. So you can differentiate between what's good, what's true, and what's not. And the other aspect that we need to look at would be multi-sourcing. Don't just be a kapamilya or a kapuso or a kapatid. Don't just be the sole fan of Rappler and then you just read everything from Rappler. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Rappler has good information, but try to look at other sources. I mean, you may not be a big fan of a particular news media organization, but you should still try to see what they have to offer. And of course, on a much bigger plane, we have to look at the dynamics between the dominant media and the alternative media. Because most of the news media organizations that people are familiar with would be part of the dominant media, ABS-CBN, GMA, Inquirer, Star, Interaction, etc., and even Rappler. But there is the alternative media, Bulatlat, Pinoy Weekly, Kodao Productions, Aninaw, which may Tudla, among many others, Davao Today, Manila Today. People may not be familiar with such alternative news media organizations, but they also offer in-depth analysis and actually a more progressive take on burning issues of the day. And they're non-profit, so they have no vested interest in reporting the news to the point where sometimes they would get red tagged. And some of them even got imprisoned because a couple of them have been imprisoned much recently. IC Salem and Frenchie May Cumpio. IC has been released, but Frenchie is still in jail right now. But the bottom line here is that with the information that's available online, you should be able to get as many sources of information as possible. And my preference would be to look at both dominant media and alternative media.
Thank you po, Sir Danny. Talagang there's a need po for us to educate ourselves because itong awareness na to, it can be our defense para hindi tayo mabiktima ng mga false information. And gaya rin po ng sinabi nyo, no, we can do that po by means of by cross-checking yung iba't ibang sources, 'di ba? Lawakan pa natin yung information bubble natin. And for your next question naman po, sir, given the fact na mga nabanggit niyo po kanina, what are the causes and effects naman po of fake news, especially po sa ating mga kabataan? And tanong ko na rin po, bakit po kaya mas nagva-viral yung fake news na or mga false information kaysa sa mga totoong facts? May ano po ba, may factor po ba dito yung biases natin? Kasi naturo po sa amin before na kapag nasusupport yung biases natin, may tendency tayo na mas maniwala sa mga false information.
Well, okay, let's address your last point first. So there's such a thing as confirmation bias, wherein you would tend to share on your social media accounts certain information that would support your preconceived notions. Okay, I mean, there should be a more level-headed approach to appreciating information because while you feel happy that there are certain analyses that would favor your own beliefs, you should also be open to looking at the other side. Not because you want to be converted to the other side or the dark side, for lack of a better term, but because you want to see how strong your position is, to see if whether or not you can answer or point by point such arguments that may run counter to your beliefs. So there is such a thing. Now, with that, sometimes there's also a related concept called cognitive dissonance, which is a common theory in communication, wherein people tend to naturally resist things that would run counter to their preconceived notion. So it's the exact opposite of confirming. Well, almost the same trend in confirmation bias, but you're looking at it the other way around. Now, in that process, the virality of fake news would tend to be, higher compared to quote unquote the truth because of, the element of shock and awe. Because sometimes, if you would notice, those that go viral would be those that would shock people, and sometimes they would believe such things. And sometimes virality could be very, very shallow. You don't believe the information, but you still share it, and then you put the caption, totoo ba ito? O kaya, bahala na po kayong humusga. Or sometimes, you know that it's fake, and then, ayan, tumira na naman siya ng kasinungalingan. Yung parang tinitira mo, pero sinishare mo pa rin. So I think that's the wrong way to battle fake news because the more you share false information, even if your intent is good, you still end up, adding to the metrics of the thousands of shares that sometimes trolls use to say that, hey, I'm telling the truth because how can thousands of people sharing it be wrong, right? So there is that problem. So if you want to share false information, take a screenshot, okay, and then watermark it by saying fake, right? So that you can be absolutely sure that people will not make any mistake about your intent to share that particular information. So that particular reality should be clear to people because with regard to fake news, it's really it's really an uphill battle insofar as people would be concerned because it's an uphill battle in the sense that we are trying to take down a well-established industry that can spend, billions upon billions of pesos. Now, as far as the consequences of fake news would be concerned, which is the first part of your question, believe it or not, fake news kills. And I'm not joking when I say that fake news kills. Why is this so? Red tagging may be considered as the highest form of fake news. You accuse people of being communists or being sympathizers of communists. What happens to them? They end up like Randy Malayaw. They end up like Randall Echaniz. They end up like Zara Alvarez. They end up like Carlito Badion. And most recently, Attorney Rex Fernandez, who was just killed today, right, in Cebu. So what's common among them? They were all red tagged in the past, and it put a target behind their backs. Okay, the most grueling would be that of Randall Echaniz, who was tortured, stabbed 70 times before he was actually killed. So it's real. Okay, so even among students, the reality of red tagging is there. Who can forget Karen Empeño and Sherdin Cadapan, who were accused of being communists, and then General Palparan was convicted of the murder? What happened to them, right? You can only imagine what Palparan and his cohorts did. So red tagging can actually kill. Of course, on another aspect, fake news can also result in people making decisions based on wrong information. It can be something as harmless as, students getting information that there are no classes for that particular day because of the heavy rains. They think that it's true, and then it turns out that there are classes after all. So sometimes it affects even your academic standing, most especially if there are exams, for example. So it affects people. Or sometimes even your livelihood could be affected if you live near the volcano and then there's, false information that the volcano will be, erupting. So you have to run and then you leave everything behind and then robbers would come in your house to get all of your valuables. So sometimes that particular aspect of fake news should also be very much exposed and disseminated to people. Because sometimes people think that the only cause of fake news is that you are fooled. Well, that's one aspect. But fake news, as I said, can get you killed. That's how serious fake news is.
Yes po, sir. Kaya naman from your response po and from your insights, it is truly important for the public, para sa ating lahat, na hindi i-trivialize ang paglaganap ng misinformation and disinformation dahil nga po sa mga insights po ninyo, sa mga naging response po ninyo, it is truly detrimental. Actually, sir, it is new to me sa pandinig ko nung sinabi ninyo na it can cause death. Not entirely new, pero it's somehow parang hindi pa ako ganun ka-familiar sa ganung impact ng fake news or ng disinformation and misinformation sa mga buhay ng mga tao. And thank you so much for your response, sir. Now, sir, for your next question, do you agree that fake news compromises our critical thinking? And if so, why?
To some extent, you can say that fake news can affect critical thinking in the sense that somehow you accept hook, line, and sinker, certain false assertions or false informations. Sometimes fake news can work this way. The data may be true, but the analysis could be wrong. For example, with regard to COVID-19 pandemic, uh, there was this issue about ivermectin, which is supposed to be an antiparasitic drug being a cure for COVID-19. To some extent, there are studies that would prove that as an antiparasitic drug, it can somehow alleviate certain symptoms of certain diseases. Okay, I mean, I've read some of the refereed articles to that effect. However, there is no mention of COVID-19 at all. Okay, so that by itself can be misleading because sometimes people will assert that ivermectin is an effective antiparasitic drug. That part is true. But if you relate it to COVID-19, that becomes false information already, right? So sometimes critical thinking would have to be the key here. The same is true with BCO. It's an underreported topic on COVID-19 because some people say that part of strengthening your immunity from COVID-19 is virgin coconut oil. Actually, there are studies that done by Filipinos, by the way, that was published in an international journal. I've read the 8-page article uh, showing the effects of BCO on COVID-19. And I can tell you right now, the results are very, very encouraging. However, the caveat there is that even the scientists who conducted the study on BCO and COVID-19 said that their sample size is still preliminary. So therefore, nothing conclusive yet, even if the results seem to be, very, very encouraging. So when you report it in the media, you cannot say that, oh, finally we have a cure for COVID-19. The results are encouraging. The keyword here is preliminary. You shouldn't forget that in the report, or that it's still, that the term used was preliminary and inconclusive. Okay, so those two terms should not be forgotten. So in that respect, you can say that there's a need for even deeper critical analysis so that people can not be misled by such wrong information. Now, the challenge again falls on media practitioners to make sure that they provide the accurate information, because sometimes, okay, I'm not hitting or criticizing our scientists, our hardworking scientists, but sometimes if you're a specialist, especially in the natural sciences, it is hard for them to communicate in words that are understandable to ordinary people, because they are used to having interactions with their colleagues where technical terms and technical jargon can be quite normal for them, right? Sometimes it happens, right? Sometimes you have classmates who are in zoology, and then you're a communication major, and then when you hear them talking, it's as if they are speaking Greek, right, for lack of a better term. That's where media becomes important, because media is supposed to popularize and transcend all of the technical jargon. And in doing so, you have to still be critical, but nevertheless understandable. Critical doesn't mean esoteric. Okay? It's all about being able to properly communicate the message. So in that respect, critical analysis will only be compromised if the media practitioners are unable to communicate it properly, or they communicate it in words that are understandable but are still misleading, because sometimes they forget certain important points of assertion. Sometimes just simply using the words preliminary and inconclusive would be forgotten.
Thank you po, sir. Thank you po for highlighting na the role of media, na wag nilang ma-mislead, no, yung mga tao sa information na sinishare nila, and the importance of being critical sa mga information na sinishare at nakikita natin, and of course, media literacy, sabi nga ni Sir Danny. Ikaw, partner, ano yung natutunan mo sa napag-usapan natin ngayon?
Ayun nga, partner, some hot tea was spilled by Dr. Ar, by Professor Araw. At ayun nga, sa dinami-dami ng mga impacts, ng mga causes, ng mga detriments ng misinformation sa ating lipunan, ang gusto kong ma-highlight at ang tumatak talaga sa isip ko ay yung sinabi ni Mr. Danny na knowledge is key, education is key in order to fight the effects, in order to counter the effects of misinformation sa ating lipunan. Kaya naman sa ating mga kakwentuhan dyan, ayan, knowledge is key. Napaka-importante ng cross-checking pagdating sa mga information na nare-receive natin online. Ayan.
Ayan, tama ka dyan, partner. Kaya naman, thank you so much po, Sir Danny, for that very, very meaningful discussion natin today. Napaka-amazing ng mga information na inyo pong naibahagi sa amin. Kaya po, we are incredibly thankful na you agreed to our invitation.
Nako partner, bago tayo mag-proceed sa ating kwentuhan, i-shout out muna natin ang ating mga kasamahan na nakikispill ng tea sa ating episode for tonight. Sino nga ba ang mga kasama natin ngayon sa ating kwentuhan? Nariyan na students from Leyte Normal University. Shout out din kay Miss Ana Rigel Dili-Dili from Olivares College, Tagaytay. Ikaw, partner, sino ang mga iba nating mga kasama sa ating kwentuhan ngayon?
Ayan, partner, shout out to Dailin Bohol from Leyte. Ayan, partner. And I think it's about time na rin, partner, for us to meet na our second speaker, partner. Ano bang chika, ano bang tea sa ating second speaker?
Indeed, our first session has been amazing so far, but hang tight guys dahil madami pa kaming isispill na tea ngayon. Allow me to introduce another unkabogable guest. The next to spill the tea, Miss Yvonne T. Chua.
Miss Yvonne T. Chua is an associate professor of journalism at the UP Diliman, where she teaches journalism ethics, fact-checking, data journalism, investigative reporting, and other forms of specialized reporting.
A long-time journalist, Miss Yvonne started out as a newspaper reporter at the now-defunct Philippines Daily Express. She joined Ang Pahayagang Malaya as one of its editors during the twilight years of the Marcos dictatorship. She was the training director of the Philippine Center for Investigative Journalism for 11 years before she decided in 2006 to teach at the university full-time.
In 2008, she co-founded the media nonprofit Verifiles, where she started and led various editorial projects until early 2019, including the fact-checking initiative, Verifiles Fact Checked. She coordinated Check PH, a pioneering collaborative fact-checking project initiated by University of the Philippines, which brought together 3 universities and 14 news organizations across the country to fact-check the 2019 Philippine elections. She later launched Fact Crackers for student fact-checkers. Ms. Yvonne has also done studies on disinformation, hate speech, and dangerous speech.
At eto pa, partner, she also co-authored the publication Information Dystopia and Philippine Democracy na nirelease early this year. Ms. Yvonne has been a member of the Commission on Higher Education's Technical Committee on Journalism since 2003.
She is also a recipient of several awards, including the National Book Award in Journalism for her book on corruption in Philippine public education, the Ninoy and Cory Aquino Award for Journalism, and the Titus Brandsma Leadership Award in Journalism. She is in the Hall for Fame of the Jaime V. Ongpin Awards for Excellence in Journalism.
Nako partner, wala akong ibang masabi kundi isang malaking wow sa mga achievements ni Miss Yvonne.
Grabe na partner, jaw-dropping talaga yung accomplishments niya. Kaya mapapatanong ka na lang ng Miss Yvonne, how to be you po? Kaya naman once again, we introduce na partner our second guest, Miss Yvonne T. Chua. Let's give her a round of virtual applause, please.
Good evening, Ma'am Yvonne. For the purpose of tonight's talk, how would you like us to address you po?
Magandang gabi sa inyong lahat. Kung feeling close kayo, you can call me Bon. And if feeling closer kayo, you can call me Bonski. Sige nga.
Sige ma'am,
Ayan.
dahil spelling tea naman po ito. Sige,
Oo.
Ma'am
Ma'am
Yvonne.
Ayan.
Pero Chan, tsaka Eva, natatawa ako sa tanong nyo na how did I get here? Siguro para sa kaalaman ng mga tao, thunders na ako senior citizen. Kaya sa dami kong taon, pag wala pa ako nagawa sa buhay ko, nakakahiya naman, di ba?
And super amazing po ng inyong mga accomplishments. Na-inspire ang ating mga ka-cyber kwentuhan, 'di ba, partner?
Yes, so
I'm sure you'll get to hear. I mean, I'm sure you even accomplish more than I have when you're my age.
At hopefully po, malaman namin ang inyong mga secrets dito sa ating kwentuhan for tonight. So for your first question po, Miss Bon, it was mentioned a while back that you co-founded VeriFiles in 2008. What prompted the organization to expand into fact-checking?
Okay, great. For that, I'd like to recall, or I'd like to point out that I wear two hats. One is as a journalist, and the other is as a journalism educator. We founded VeriFiles in 2008 to undertake in-depth reporting kasi marami pang mga underreported na issues. But by 2016, this is the election year. And, since 2012, in my class, journalism ethics class, we've been talking about disinformation, and I've introduced my students to the concept of fact-checking, especially political fact-checking. So dumating in 2016, di ba? If you recall, the COMELEC had organized presidential debates, yung mga televised debates. And for the first time, we saw quite a number of newsroom fact-checking the debates themselves. But my students said, Ma'am, parang kulang po yan. Parang maraming namimiss. Tsaka, bakit nakalimit lang sa debate? So I said, would you like to fact-check on a regular basis? So gusto nila. So we didn't just fact-check the presidential candidates. We also looked into yung vice presidential candidates and the senatorial candidates. Ngayon, weekly nila ginagawa yan on top of what they were learning in my journalism ethics course. Sayang naman yung output, di ba? But since I'm a co-founder of VeriFiles, sabi ko, ilagay kaya natin dyan sa election microsite ng VeriFiles. So we called it, Is That So? Medyo mataray, no? Parang, talaga? Is that so? And that was where student fact checks began seeing light. And then after the elections, we found that it was so successful. And since, like I said, founder ako ng VeriFiles, we decided at VeriFiles to scale it up. Naging VeriFiles fact check siya, and this time involving professional fact checkers na binabayaran na this time to do fact check on a sustained basis.
Ayan, thank you po for your response, Miss Yvonne. And I think ang laking tulong po ng mga ganitong fact-checking organizations kasi yung mga iba po nating mga ka-cyberkwentuhan and social media users na hindi gaanong aware kung paano ba mag-spot ng fake sa totoo, natutulungan ng mga ganitong klaseng organizations tulad ng VeriFiles. And having said that po, for your next question po, aside from VeriFiles, are there any other fact-checking initiatives that you are involved with po?
Yes, nabanggit kanina sa intro, no? And I'm very proud of this kasi they showcase really how good fact-checkers students can be, no? In 2019, election time na naman, ang ginawa ng University of the Philippines system was it decided to initiate the first collaborative fact-checking in the country. Alam nyo kasi, yung mga media, mga newsrooms natin, di ba, very competitive. Ayaw nila magsama-sama na, lalo na kung may malaking event. But we thought that maybe under the umbrella of UP, which is neutral ground, they might come together. And they did, no? We were able to gather a number of newsrooms, as was mentioned in the intro, and several other universities to collaborate in fact-checking the 2019 elections. This was called check.ph. So for that period ng election, sama-sama yung 14 na organizations na nagfa-fact-check ng election. Siyempre, that was an ad hoc, temporary. My students, of course, were very much involved. You would be surprised, no? Dun sa output ng check.ph itself, ang pinakamalaking contributions came from student fact-checkers, mostly from UP. So paano naman, sayang naman kung walang outlet, no? Walang outlet yung mga fact checks ng mga estudyante. Kasi by then, naging full semester course na ang fact checking. Maniwala kayo sa hindi, ang UP ay may full semester course just on disinformation and fact checking. So talagang regular sila naglalabas ng fact checks. So we created a website and social media accounts called Fact Rakers. If you know yung journalism, yung muck rakers is a term that refers to investigative reporters. So we like kind of took, played around with the word and called it fact rakers. So up to now, it's still around, very much around, and students get to debunk not just disinformation that we find in the digital atmosphere, but also those that are offline. Na marami rin siya.
Thank you, Ms. Yvonne, for your response. For your next question naman po, sa Vera Files po, do you have any current partnerships with any social media networking sites that allows you to flag fake news contents?
Okay, so I will not just talk about Vera Files, but also other fact checkers in the Philippines. Pero before that, would you like me to talk a little about how we do the fact checking? Konti lang about the fact checking process. Do you think would that would interest our listeners kaya? Sige.
Yes po, ma'am.
So ito, ang mahalaga as a fact checker is minomonitor regularly yung mga claims na ginagawa online and offline to make sure that they are truthful, no? When we say offline, these would be not just your politicians, but public figures, pwede ring NGO, whoever has influence who makes a statement that matters in our lives. Pero syempre, marami rin sa digital, like yung mga hoaxes, mga pictures na minamali, yung mga quote cards, no? But having seen that, sa sobrang dami, you have to first ascertain kung fact-checkable. Ibig sabihin, tandaan nyo, pag may nakita kayong isang, kailangan fact-checkable, kailangan merong facts na pwedeng i-refute o i-confirm yung information na yun. That means, bawal yung opinion at bawal din yung mga plano o hindi pa nagaganap unless may crystal ball ka nga that you can gaze into the future. Mahalaga rin yung makabuluhan, yung relevance, kasi kung halimbawa, between yung sinabi ng Pangulo na kunyari, itong mas maliit yung sweldo niya, paulit-ulit na gano'n, no? Sa na pinatay na isang artista, mas malaki ang sinabi ng Pangulo. So yung relevance din, napakahalaga. Reach, and then we also take into account the potential to cause harm. Nabanggit ni Danny, no? Red tagging. So pag may red tagging, talagang isang red flag na yon. Having said that, we also need to find out as fact checkers, meron bang evidence to debunk? Minsan, may evidence pero dahil na yung information is in the custody of the government and they refuse to release it. Remember yung war on drugs nung una ayaw nila i-release, di ba? Yung mga actual cases. Then minsan mahirap i-debunk. So that said, mahalaga rin is in debunking to use as much as possible primary sources, no? So eyewitness, first-hand accounts, instead of mga secondary or chismis. So here, it's not just evaluating the evidence, but also evaluating the source of information. Sino bang naglabas niyan? Diba? Anong reach din niya? After that, hindi pa tapos, nagsusulat ka na, kailangan pang may mag-peer review, mag-vet to ensure na tama yung And then of course, the last stage is production in either text, video, infographics, or audio. Pero kailangan rin i-update kasi nakita natin halimbawa itong COVID-19, itong pandemya, di ba science keeps evolving? Dati sinabi na, pwedeng hindi mag-mask. Remember? Face mask. Later on, sinabi, dapat mag-face mask. And then of course, the last step is kung nagkamali, you should be brave enough, courageous enough to also own up to your mistakes. So dapat may corrections policy. So, ang haba, no? Sorry, May pupunta ako dun sa, sinabi niyo yung partnership, no? Ang mga tech companies, mga platforms naman ay nakikipag-partner naman sa mga fact checkers, no? Dito sa Pilipinas, may 3 organizations na kasama doon sa tinatawag nating International Fact-Checking Network at Pointer, IFCN. Itong IFCN noong 2016, naglabas na siya ng standards or principles ng fact-checking. Very high. Halimbawa, kailangan fair, non-partisan, transparent, among others. Kapag ikaw ay makapag-comply and you are verified, you can become a third-party fact-checker of Facebook. Alam natin, ang Facebook, ang pinakamalaking reach. No? Most of us are on Facebook. Like Danny said a while ago, of those who are wired or have access to the internet, 100% of those who are online are on social media, and nearly all of them are on Facebook. At ang dami talagang kumakalat na disinformation sa Facebook. So what does it mean kapag third-party fact-checker ka? Facebook will ask you to debunk false or misleading claims. Some of these are identified by them through their algorithm. So may algorithm sila. They'll tell you, oh, ito, viral na to, ang laki ng reach for how long. But at the same time, bilang mga fact-checkers like Verifal's Fact Check, Rappler, and the Manila Bureau of AFP, pwede ka rin mag-suggest ng sarili mong fact-check na ilalagay mo. Ngayon, pag binigay mo na yung fact-check mo, i-rate mo na, ang gagawin ng Facebook, ile-label nila. Kaya nakikita nyo, di ba? Pag pumasok kayo sa Facebook, naka-label yan. May warning sign na fact check na to. This is false. Gusto ba nyong tumuloy? Di ba? Do you want to continue? Do you want to read the fact check? Do you want to find out about the fact checker? Do you want to read about related articles? So in that sense, makikita nyo, talagang direct hit if you become a partner. So ang laking bagay din to become a partner. And that's why on our part, we really encourage more fact-checking, or we're encouraging more people to set up fact-checking units and to get themselves verified or accredited by IFCN so that they could also be in that sphere.
Thank you
just to
po
mention, no?
Ay, sige po.
Sorry.
Go ahead
Parang
po.
gusto ko lang banggitin, Eva, tsaka Jan, hindi lang Facebook, no, ang may partnership with mga fact-checkers, no? So, kung aware kayo, halimbawa, so Verifiles, Rappler, tsaka AFP, no, kasama sila dun sa Facebook. Pero di ba, ang TikTok nagiging source of news na rin and source of fake news din. Di ba, alam niya yan, di ba, TikTok? So, ang ginawa ng TikTok, nakipag-partner siya sa AFP Global. So, pandaigdigan, global, at isa pang lead stories to fight fake news. Ang Twitter naman, alam niyo, sila, di ba meron silang parang tinatawag na bird watch. Ibig sabihin, crowdsource yan. Kung ikaw ay nagtitweet, may nakita kang mali, pwede mong ilagay, tapos i-examine ng Twitter kung tama o mali, flag nila rin. Pero ang ginawa nila, nakipag-partner din sila sa malaking news agencies na Associated Press tsaka ang Reuters para magbigay ng additional context sa mga to. So napakahalaga to. By the way, ang AP tsaka Reuters are also into fact-checking din. So yan. Sorry, haba ng sagot ko.
Ayan. Okay lang po. Very informative naman po. Ayan. Thank you so much po, Miss Yvonne, for that. And eto naman po, for your next question po, based on your archives po, what do you think is the biggest fake news or pinaka-viral na fake news na na-encounter nyo po, and paano nyo po siya na-correct?
Okay. Maraming ways, there are many approaches to answer that question. No? Medyo mahirap yung how do you solve it or paano mo i-correct yung impact. Pero nabanggit na ni Professor Araw, ni Danny kanina, yung sobrang nakakabagabag yung red tagging. At napaka-viral talaga nun dahil sa ang mismong ahensya ng mga pamahalaan ang tumutulak ng ganyang klaseng maling impormasyon. So you can very well imagine a reach, no, on all fronts. It's not just the National Task Force to end local communist armed conflict, kasama din yung PCOO Undersecretary, kasama din dyan yung NICA, kasama yung mga military and police agencies. In fact, Facebook even took down, di ba, a network na that included military and police mga accounts, no? So red tagging is really one of the most disturbing. Pero one way to look at it is also yung influence ng tao. At lagi ko sinasabi na although hindi siya digital savvy, sobrang dami kasi niyang DDS behind him na tumutulak na maling impormasyon. So you can very well, para siyang Trump, no? Although not quite close to Trump, sobrang daming kay Trump kasi may Twitter si Trump, di ba? Kaya marami siyang digital. Pero ang Pangulo mismo natin, no, has been the source of a disturbing and viral disinformation. I would just cite yung one, no? Alam natin na 3 beses niya inulit, no, na yung gasoline is a disinfectant against the coronavirus, which we know is not true. 3 beses niya inulit. Abril, sabi niya, lublog nyo yung inyong arm, mamamatay yung virus. Pangalawang beses nung Hulyo, hugasan na face mask, di ba? And then when his spokesperson ng DOH tried to correct him, inulit pa niya na totoo. So, for those believers, di ba, yung mga supporters niya, they will likely take him seriously, and that's very dangerous. Isa pang way at looking at mga pinaka-viral would be yung pinaka-persistent, pinaka-long-running. And for this, what comes to mind is yung historical revisionism or historical negation ng mga Marcoses. Alam natin yun, no? Na parang, this is the greatest government we've ever had in the Philippines. He's the best leader that we've had. There was no corruption, no human rights abuses. Yung Marcos Gold, di ba? Yung kanyang yaman ay galing sa Marcos Gold. Walang na-convict sa kanila. All these are falsehoods. And that they persist, no? And we see, hindi siya, kahit anong gawin mo, nandyan siya. It's very persistent. Minsan, makikita rin natin na sa pandemya, no, marami rin talagang kumalat na viral, no? So yung mga conspiracy theories, halimbawa, yung 5G, nakaka-transmit daw ng, di ba, ng coronavirus. Pero yung isa na napag-aralan ko, nakakaaliw. Parang on the surface, it looks harmless, but actually, it is also dangerous. Isa sa mga fake news na kumalat ay, in order to beat or fend off the coronavirus, you should eat food with pH values of from 5 to 5 to 8. 8.5. I think you must have heard of that. Tapos may listahan ng mga prutas, no? Lemon, pineapple, the mga supposedly pH values na mas mataas than the coronavirus. Number 1, wala namang pH value yung virus na yon kasi hindi naman siya living organism, di ba? Pangalawa, yung mga sinite nila, mali-mali. Mali-mali yung mga values. So, why is it dangerous? Sasabihin mo yung isang prutas ay alkaline, no? Highly alkaline when it is acidic. If you are a person suffering from hyperacidity, can you imagine what would happen to you? Number 2, just like the virus, mga fake news nag-mutate. So kagaya nito, siguro mga more than 3 dozen versions ito, no? Nahaluan siya ng iba. Yung isang version, sinasabi mag-self-medicate kapag may nararamdaman, mag-antibiotics, and we know how deadly it is to self-medicate with But just to show you na this was so viral, it was so persistent, even if it has been debunked so many times, umabot yan sa 5 continents, parang more than 20 plus countries, in I think more than 2 dozen languages, and dami niyang iterations. May Spanish, may African, may Burmese, may Malaysian, may Filipino. At pabalik-balik siya. Kasi Pebrero last year siya nag-start. Nung nag-lockdown na naman tayo nung Abril, nakita ko na naman siya, naging viral na naman siya. So it just shows you na you talk about impact, fact-checking has an immediate impact, but there's no stopping people from repeating a lie.
Thank you, Miss Yvonne. Talaga nga naman masasabi natin na marami kayong na-encounter na mga different false information in your field of work. And thank you so much for sharing those posts to us. Now, for your last question po. Researchers from New York University revealed that most of the perpetrators of fake news are self-identified conservatives over 65 who are 7 times more likely to share fake content than people aged 18 to 29. This is in the context of United States. How about here in the Philippines, ma'am? In the Philippine context, are there any data similar to this?
Jan and Eva, wala tayong similar study, no, in the Philippines. So, mahirap tularan, o kaya to hazard a guess close to that, no. But ito lang, no, and maybe this might be useful para pag-isipan natin to reflect upon. Yung mga anecdotally, naririnig natin yung mga titos, titas, nanay, tatay, lolo, lola are among those na who share disinformation or misinformation. Many of them are well-meaning naman. Even our teachers, if you think about it, meron akong class dati, sinabi sa akin ng mga estudyante ko, Ma'am, yung high school teacher ko, siya yung behind the super spreader ng fake news. No? So that's anecdotally. And sometimes when you look at it, maliban sa confirmation bias na sinasabi ni Professor ni Danny kanina, meron din tayong tinatawag na illusory superiority. Yung pakiramdam natin na hindi tayo magiging biktima or we're super confident of our capability to tell something, no? So in this case, fake news from or disinformation from the truth. Now, what I'd like to share also is, but this is not specific to disinformation or fake news, no? In the latest digital news report study ng Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism, so ito ay global, kasama ang Pilipinas, no? May more than 2,000 respondents. Ito ang nakita nilang behavior pagdating sa pag-share ng balita. Take note, balita in general, not fake news in particular. Pagdating sa age groups, yung mga ages 18 to 24, 32% share the news via social network. So Facebook, YouTube, diba, Twitter, versus pagdating sa mga thunder, 65 and above, 40%. So 8 points mas malaki o mas malaki ang chance na mag-share yung nasa 65 na age group. Pagdating sa political leaning, so ang tinanong kasi ng digital news report how would you classify yourself? So kunyari, if you were in what you perceive to be progressive socialist parties, so left-wing ka, left. Kung ikaw ay conservative, right ka. So right, no? So yung mga, those people who classify themselves as left, no, they 34% said they share news via social network. So that's compared to 41% for those who classify themselves as right, conservative. So in this case, yung conservative mas likely mag-share ng balita via social network. And if it's via messaging apps, so Viber or your Telegram or Messenger, 26% of those who consider themselves as left share news regularly via messaging apps versus slightly higher, mga 29% for those in center and right. So from there, ang madodraw lang nating conclusion is those who are older are likely to share news. Those who are conservative are also more likely to share news. But to approximate yung finding ng New York na those who are conservative in their 65 are likely to share fake news, wala tayong ganong klaseng data.
Thank you po, Miss Yvonne, sa pag-clarify po nun. And I think it's important din na we do our part na if kaya nating i-correct yung mga nag-share and victimize ng mga false information na to, no, we correct them, we send them the right sources in a respectful way, di ba, partner?
Yes, partner. At thank you so much po ulit, Miss Yvonne, for your insights, for your stories as well, for sharing them to all of us. Pero sa ating mga kakwentuhan ngayon, hindi dyan natatapos ang ating kwentuhan. Kasi partner, meron pa tayong something that's in store for this night's episode. Ano nga ba yon, partner?
Yes, partner. Dahil magaganda at maiinit ang mga tsaang na ibahagi sa atin ngayon, we are now opening our Q&A session. And with that, let's invite again Sir Danny to join us po sa ating Q&A session para mabigyang linaw ang mga katanungan ng ating mga kakwentuhan. So unang-una na po, question from Mr. Paulo Sangil. So sabi po niya, correct information is the typical response to misinformation and disinformation. However, orchestrated campaigns systematically target the emotions of its audience to gain traction. Are there any efforts to help equip audiences to safeguard themselves against the emotional encroachment which makes them vulnerable to misinformation and disinformation? So let's have Sir Danny po muna.
Okay, in terms of efforts, you can say that going back to the basics of journalism could be the key to ensuring that there is no emotional encroachment whatsoever. However, the reality also is that even if you do a good job as a journalist, there's a theory in communication where there would still be limited effects of the media. The tendency of people would be just to read the headlines or maybe the first few paragraphs. The problem is if you don't have the full context or you don't have the full picture of what's happening, you may still be prone to misinformation and disinformation. And the challenge in terms of battling or fighting disinformation that's very, very emotional, yung parang, guys, share nyo ito, urgent ito, dalian natin. Okay, so we cannot do that in journalism. We cannot write in the journalistic output that this is of urgent concern because that would be up to the audiences to discern. So having said that, going back to the basics would be important, but the bigger challenge also for journalists would be to very well communicate their message and even maximizing various platforms. Maybe I can tell you that a few years ago, I would conclude that there's nothing to gain from having an account on TikTok. I mean, it's just full of dances and comedy skits. But right now, even the Washington Post has its own TikTok account. So it's possible to even maximize that. So even for journalists, we cannot disregard social media because the battle in terms of disinformation would be social media. So it's imperative for various news media organizations to make their presence felt there. But at the same time, not stoop to the level of, kababawan, for lack of a better term. Hindi naman natin sinasabi na yung mga reporter dapat matuto ng magsayaw para maka-TikTok, di ba? Or dapat na magmukhang model na pagkaganda-ganda para mag-Instagram. So we can maximize such platforms but still stick to the basics of journalism.
Miss Yvonne, for your answer po.
Okay. So alam natin yung mga disinformation players, the bad actors among us, they really put out those information to manipulate our emotions, to make you laugh, to make you angry, to make you scared. Maraming emotions yan. So basic yun, no? Number one lagi, pause muna. Pause muna. Check your emotions. I think that's the number one thing that we all have to do as citizens. And then maganda talaga, kaya lagi namin ini-stress, no, Dani, na mahalaga yung news literacy. Kasi ang news literacy tinuturo sa atin, hindi paano magsulat ng balita, pero anong ginagawa ng journalist in order to verify that information is trustworthy. So, may tatlong things na kailangan yung tandaan kahit walang training pa kayo. So, pause muna, check your emotions, and then what next? The next thing is, number one, evaluate the evidence that is in that post. Diba? Anong evidence binibigay sa'yo? May prueba ba? Diba? Number two, evaluate the source of information. Sino naglabas niyan? Ito ba'y pasa-pasa na? Pwede mo ba hanapin natin yung source of information? Sino ba to? At pangatlo, parang mga journalists ka talaga, also find out what others say about this source of information. For all you know, many times, itong mga kumakalat niya, pag binalikan mo na sa original, the provenance, yung source of information, you'll find out na natag na pala siya, na fact-check na pala siya, nandyan siya sa listahan ng mga nagpe-peddle ng disinformation. So yun lang gusto kong paalala. One, pause muna, check your emotions, and then 2, 3 steps, evaluate the evidence, evaluate the source of information, and evaluate what others say about the source of information.
Thank you so much for your answers para sa ating first question, Miss Yvonne and Sir Danny. Now, for our next question, the big challenge for us today is media literacy. It is important for us to know more about social media for us to distinguish what is true information and what is disinformation. It is very alarming nowadays that fake news is very rampant that is affecting our society. The question is, how can we really distinguish the true information from disinformation? Unahin na po natin si Sir Danny.
In truth-telling, Edmund Lambeth mentions two kinds of accuracy: factual accuracy and contextual accuracy. Because when we say information, it's not just data, it's also analysis. So how do you distinguish between the truth and the fake? Of course, it has to do with what Yvonne mentioned a while ago, provenance. Okay, can you be able to trace the source of information? But it doesn't stop there. Sometimes you're able to trace the source, but at the same time, you must be able to properly vet the claims that are made, not just the data, but also the analysis. Because as I said a while ago, sometimes misinformation can be due to correct data, but the analysis could be misleading or outright wrong. Or sometimes the data are wrong, but to some extent, the analysis may be correct, but it rarely happens. But there are certain nuances to that effect. But factual and contextual accuracy would be important. If it is a bit hard to discern the news or to vet properly the news, then you have to be doubtful of the information that you get. But for very, very pressing issues, this is something that we have to keep in mind. It cannot be published by just one website. If it's a very, very urgent issue, most likely various news media organizations would be carrying that particular information, and that's where multi-sourcing becomes important. So isang red flag na rin talaga rito, yung parang meron kang isang obscure na website, tapos sinasabi niya, halimbawa lang, meron ng cure sa COVID-19, you don't need to be injected. Dapat yung impormasyong yan nasa iba pang mga website o nasa iba pang mga news media organization. Pagka wala, syempre medyo may konting pagdudugda ka. At baka nga, lalo na kung obscure yung website, most likely it can be false information that should be flagged.
How about you po, Miss Yvonne? What's your response to that?
I mentioned a while ago na what to do, no? Pero sa akin, parang, lalo pagdating sa media and information literacy, I think yung ating campaign dito sa Philippines, times misses the point eh. Now, what they should be helping citizens with, individuals with, is the ability to identify information itself. Kasi we're bombarded, like, alam, sa communication, parang we take it for granted, no? But for those who don't have that study communication, there are so many types of information, and you can define them by purpose. If they're able to tell that, malaking, that's the first step. So, halimbawa, there's information that's intended na vetted, reliable, trustworthy. Balita yon. Then you have opinion, right? Alam natin opinion. It's intended to persuade. You have propaganda. It's intended to provoke. You have advertisement or advertising intended to sell, right? And you have raw information, and ang dami. But studies have shown that even among us, there's this inability to even distinguish news from advertising, lalo na in the digital sphere, no? So this is one thing for me that MIL, if ever we should do that, should begin with, is to teach our citizens how to recognize information based on, among others, the primary purpose that they were developed for or crafted for.
Thank you po, Ms. Yvonne. And now po, we have some questions po from our Zoom participants. So this is from Sir Ted. Sabi po niya, what are the tried and tested steps for fact-checking? So let's have Sir Danny po.
Tried and tested. Actually, there are a lot. As Yvonne said, there's the International Fact-Checking Network where, of course, you have to have certain steps to ensure that the facts, the information that you get would be more or less reliable. So, well, for purposes of this discussion, let's try to narrow it down to a few points. First would be provenance. So, if the source of information is more or less coming from a reliable news source, then there is a possibility that it might be true. Okay? So parang may konting possibility na makatotoo siya. Pero yun na nga hindi naman lahat ng nilalabas. Kumbaga parang sometimes they're prone to honest mistakes or errors, di ba, in judgment. So again, it's necessary to also look at authorship. So minsan nakakalimutan ilagay yung author, so dapat i-call out natin yung media kung hindi nakalagay yon. Tapos you look at the form and the content. So maraming aspects sa form pero dapat siguraduhin natin na tama yung grammar, syntax, and diction. Okay? So why do we need to stress that point? Kasi nga sophisticated na yung fake news. So minsan napepeke kahit yung URL ng Al Jazeera by just simply omitting one letter. So tapos yung design niya parang Al Jazeera pa rin yung dating. Tapos I'm mentioning Al Jazeera kasi Al Jazeera yung prone na napepeke talaga aside from BBC. So I'm not sure about local networks kung meron ng napeke. But anyway, yung Al Jazeera ganon. So minsan nagkamali ka, akala mo totoo yung website tapos mali pala. Pero there are other steps to do that. So yung authorship, tapos yung form, yung grammar, syntax, and diction. For some reason, maybe it can be explained later by Yvonne, pagka fake news, usually ungrammatical siya. I don't know why they did not invest too much on proofreaders or professional English majors. Maybe Yvonne can explain that later. Tapos yung, aside from form, yung content din. So sometimes there's a saying, parang rule of thumb siya, if it's too good to be true, probably it is too good to be true. So it may not be the truth. So kumbaga marami pang steps, but those are the most basic that can be kept in mind by ordinary consumers like you and me to ensure that we don't fall for fake news. And of course, I don't want to sound like a broken record here. Multi-sourcing is also the key. So hindi porke nilabas ng peking website na yon, totoo na. So dapat tingnan din natin yung iba pang mga sources of information. So you have verifiles, you have bulat-lat, for example. So pwede mong pagkumparahin halimbawa yung sinulat ng dalawang yon para tingnan kung yung datos ba tama talaga. So posible magkaiba sa analysis pero at least dun sa datos nagkakaisa.
Thank you po, Sir Danny. So, check the source, check the content, and do multi-sourcing. Ayan. Now, let's have Miss Yvonne naman po.
Ang fact-checking may methodology and a lot of the fact-checkers publish their methodology. Pero kung gusto niyo talaga matuto, sige, enroll kayo sa class ko. Okay? I'll teach you how to do it. But there are two things to remember. No? You can what we deal with is yung mga textual claims. So, nakasulat talaga text. Visual claims. So, video, infographics, pictures, and a combination of textual and visual. So, bawat isa may kanya-kanyang approach. Nabanggit na ni Danny kahalagahan ng pag-establish ng provenance. Saan ba nanggaling? Yung provenance also would it require, in the case of images, syempre yung paggamit ng, naririnig nyo yan, no? Reverse image search. Pagdating sa video, meron siyang scene by scene na i-analyze. Tapos, meron ka pang image metadata, digital forensics, geolocation, ang dami. Kaya sabi ko nga sa inyo, isang buong kurso pwede natin pag-aralan. If you're interested, I'd be more than happy to teach you that. But what's important is also the textual claim, no? So, primary sources, the use of primary sources is very important here. Paggamit ng primary sources to debunk. Kasi bakit, sabi niyo, pwede naman gamitin yung nilabas ng dyaryo. Minsan kasi, kanya-kanyang version, iba-ibang version yung lumalabas sa dyaryo. So it's really good to get the primary source, yung original source din in debunking. And one of the things that we also do as fact-checkers is, sige nga, this is probably a new term for some, not all. In the case of reading, how do we read? We do vertical reading, we do upstream reading, and we do lateral reading. So, these are techniques that we also use. I won't go into that. Like I said, if you're really interested, I'd be more than happy. And I'm sure the other fact-checking organizations would be more than happy to share the techniques and the methods with you.
Thank you so much for your responses, Mr. Danny and Miss Yvonne. And that question is actually from Father Ted Gonzalez, one of the advisors of Cyber Guardians PH. Thank you, Father Ted, for your question.
Thank you, Father Ted.
Now for the last question before we end the Q&A, we have a question from Mr. Marco Nicolai Pimentel. And the question is there any movement for the prevention of the spread of the fake news? Let's start po with Mr. Danny.
From the media side, there are a lot. So that's why there's an international fact-checking network precisely to fight lies, misinformation, and disinformation. In the academe, there are also various steps to that direction. Election watchdogs are also doing that. One interesting point about the consumer movement in the Philippines is that there's not much consumer movement going on, and that's why consumer rights are not being asserted. Now, why am I mentioning consumer rights? It's because if we look at media consumers as consumers, then it's imperative for ordinary people like you and me to also, try to have a movement toward misinformation and disinformation, keeping in mind the existence of already, established mechanisms. For example, in Cebu, you have a press council in partnership with ordinary citizens, citizen press council, or something to that effect, right? So if we can, I think CMFR tried to implement that on a nationwide scale, but of course, there's a need to sustain that for the simple reason that disinformation should not just be the battle of both media and the academe, because even looking at ordinary people as media consumers, so they should also be able to have a say on the matter. And of course, we cannot stress enough the fact that certain initiatives in Congress should also be done. But of course, the anti-fake news law is not the solution. Okay, let me emphasize this important point, because sometimes if your definition of fake news is really so broad that it can infringe on freedom of expression, having a law that will regulate fake news would be more detrimental rather than productive. So much a bigger segment of the media community would gravitate toward opposing laws that would regulate fake news, because the key here would be self-regulation of the media that can be maximized to ensure that fake news will be exposed and that people will not fall for it. I doubt if fake news will be totally erased, because people earn from fake news, unfortunately. It has become a global industry. So the most that we can do would be to expose these people and to, always use the name Nick Gabunada in a sentence, for example, when we talk about fake news. Anyway, so I don't want to say anything more because I might be sued for cyber libel. Thank you.
Thank you po, Sir Danny. And now let's have Miss Yvonne naman po.
Danny raised a lot of points, so I will not repeat those items. But I'd just like to stress that disinformation is really a serious problem in the Philippines. Earlier, at the start of your interview with Danny, you cited an Inquirer.net study, which was based on another study, a global study. Ang pinaka-recent study ng Digital News Report for 2020 shows that 89% of Filipinos reported being exposed to disinformation. Only 4% said they had not encountered disinformation. So, kasi yung 7% said they don't know. But safely we could say 9 out of 10 Filipinos are exposed. What does that mean? Fact check alone is not enough. Fact checking alone is not enough. Information studies, disinformation studies by academia is not alone. Kailangan talagang tinatawag natin lagi na holistic or whole of society approach. Kailangan multi-stakeholders. Ang pamahalaan, not in the form of law regulating content, but something else, because we don't want infringement on free speech or freedom of expression. But the fight against disinformation also involves academia, the platforms themselves, right? Media, because they're very well positioned to fight fake news, civil society, communities, no? Students, and individuals themselves. Kailangan talagang and there have been different initiatives that have been identified for each sector. The question now is how to bring them all together in order to bear fruit, diba? And have a bearing, at least make a dent. I mean, we won't be able to stop it, but at least to make a dent in the proliferation of disinformation.
And that is it for our session of probing and discussion with our guests, Mr. Danilo Araw and Miss Yvonne T. Chua. Ang dami po, nais po namin kayong pasalamatan sapagkat napakarami niyo pong insights na na-provide sa amin, stressing the fact that fake news, misinformation, and disinformation are serious problems in the Philippines. At ito pa po ang mga natutunan namin that it has become an industry and thus it should be exposed and we should fight it. At gaya ng sinabi po ni Mr. Danilo Araw, the key here is knowledge and media literacy. And ang highlight naman po ni Miss Yvonne is to bring all these different groups together involving the academe, the media, different communities as well as individuals and students in order for us to effectively hopefully stop the spread of these these issues in our country as well as our world. Ikaw naman, partner, ano naman ang mga masasabi mo sa ating kwentuhan with our speakers?
Yes, no. In general, no, pinarealize sa atin ni Sir Danny and ni Miss Yvonne na kailangan lahat tayo may responsibility to educate ourselves, no, to make an effort na mag-fact check at hindi lang mag-fact check na hindi talaga tayo mabiktima nitong mga false information na to. As audiences, we have to be critical and careful sa pag-absorb ng information, and as sa media naman, 'di ba, they need to be very critical din sa pagko-contextualize ng news. And sana lahat ng mga cyberkwentuhan natin ngayon na-realize din na kumbaga moral and social obligation na natin ito, na wag na tayo makadagdag pa sa proliferation ng misinformation and disinformation. And with that, thank you po Sir Danny and Miss Yvonne sa pagpapaunlak sa aming munting imbitasyon na samahan po kami sa kwentuhan na ito. And with that po, we would like to present to you your certificates of appreciation po. So, for your certificates po, the certificate of appreciation is presented to Mr. Danilo A. Araw and Ms. Yvonne T. Chua for imparting their knowledge and valuable insights as resource persons during the hashtag Cyberkwentuhan, Episode 12, hashtag Fact the Fact, spilling the tea on fake news and misinformation via Zoom session given this 26th of August 2021. Signed by the core member representative of Cyber Guardians PH, Ms. Maria Concepcion T. Sangil.
Once again, we would like to thank the both of you, Paul, for gracing us with your knowledge and with your presence, Professor Arao and Ms. Chua. Before we end tonight's program, may we remind everyone to please fill out the feedback form to help us further improve our upcoming episodes for hashtag Cyberkwentuhan.
That's right. And may you continue to educate the youth on the importance of fact checking, especially at this age when disinformation and misinformation remains rampant. If you're here sa aming Zoom session, the link will be sent to the chat box. And if you're watching the stream naman via Facebook, it will be posted in the comments. All those who will fill out the feedback form will be receiving a certificate of attendance.
Now, before we conclude our hashtag Cyberkwentuhan episode for tonight, it is our honor to present the DND Consortium website. The Consortium on Democracy and Disinformation is a nationwide network of journalists, academics, bloggers, and civil society representatives in the Philippines, supported by the Ateneo de Manila University, De La Salle, Philippines, Holy Angel University, and the University of the Philippines, whom in unity aims to fight the spread of disinformation in the country. Pwede nyo pong i-visit ang kanilang website by searching fightdisinfo.ph.
Ayan, and there we have it. We hope that our kakwentuhans will take the time to support and maximize the use of this website, no partner, while the tea is still burning hot.
Nako, tama yan, partner. Isang malaking step yan in order for us to fight disinformation sa ating bansa. Kaya naman, as for the last part of today's kwentuhan, may we remind everyone to partake in the upcoming national election for 2022. While it is our right to political participation, it is also our responsibility bilang mga citizens. Kaya naman, magparehistro na and vote wisely. Babangon tayo, Pilipinas, sa 2022.
Tama, wag lang tayo puro chika sa social media. Dapat may gawa rin. Kaya naman, register to vote. And now that we've had an eventful night no, with our special guests kanina, I know, partner, that there are souls in the audience who want to be part of this initiative.
Kaya naman, for the interested students, please fill out the Cyber Youth Empowerment Form if you want to be a Cyber Youth Champion or a Cyber Youth Warrior.
Please don't forget to indicate your Facebook account so we can invite you to our closed Facebook group. And make sure then that you won't miss our next episode of Cyber Kwentuhan. So it will be on September 9, 2021, 6:30 p.m. Ayan. Magkita-kita tayo dyan, mga kakwentuhan. Keep an eye out then on our Facebook page para sa iba pang updates.
At syempre, huwag nating kalimutang i-acknowledge dahil Cyber Kwentuhan has been made possible by Cyber Guardians PH. Salamat po for all the coalition members for helping co-create a safer cyberspace for all. See you again for the next episode, guys.
Once again, I am your friendly host, Evangel Reyes, and this is my partner,
John Christian David. This has been #Fact na Fact.
spilling the tea on fake news and misinformation. Once again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us in tonight's Kwentuhan.
See you all in our next episode po. Thank you so much.
Right? The human being can do more. We're capable of more.
I hope po with the showing of that video, somehow, na-feel po natin sa hearts natin that something needs to be done. And again, all of us has the capability to do something.
Tataas ko ng consciousness ko para mas makita ko, mas palawak. I see the bigger picture. I see the interconnectedness. I see all the stakeholders in the system.
say the church has the obligation to say, mali yung ginagawa niyong pornography, mali yung ginagawa ninyong pag-facilitate ng cybercrime.
Hindi kaya ng supuin mag-isa ng gobyerno ang problemang ito. Isang magandang inspirasyon ang ginagawa ng IJN, ng ECPAT, at even ang Cyber Guardian.
All the more na-highlight talaga sa forum natin this afternoon, ang need to really update our approach, policies, and laws in order to address this problem of cyberbullying.
Nagpapasalamat kami sa buong cyber chat team. Napakarami po naming natutunan at maibabahagi pa sa aming mga kapwa kabataan.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate all the efforts of cyber guardians who are actively involved in the fight against OSEC.
Masaya kami kasi mayroon na naman kaming karagdagang network na nakilala itong sa inyo at I think mas magiging makulay ang ating laban.
Kinilabutan ako sa narinig kong kwento. Batang 10 taon, nakatikim ng abuso. Imbes na manika ang pinalalaro, mga magulang niya'y pilit siyang inilalako. Hindi ko kayang magtimpi, buha ay di napigil. Buto sa aking katawan, lipat ng gigigil. Higit 600,000 na at dumadami pa ang nabibiktima. Buhayin natin ang kinabukasan, iligtas natin ang pag-asa ng bayan. Tungkulin ang bawat isa, alagaan ang munting kabataan. Mula ngayon, ipangako mo, babantayan bawat paslit ng bayan. Ibalik sila sa paralan, ang ating pamanang di mapapantayan. Buhayin natin ang kinabukasan, iligtas natin ang pag-asa ng bayan. Tungkulin ang bawat isa, alagaan ang munting kabataan. Mula ngayon,
Be